Hello, and welcome to the Caring View. This is really exciting. Me, Amelia, and Dr. Anna have been asked to do a takeover show on neurodiversity. So firstly, just want to say Caring View, so on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And before I forget, tomorrow, there's a special PIR podcast with Karen Ritson, and they've got a free advent calendar thing. So yeah, check it out. So, just to introduce myself, if you don't already know who I am, I'm Female, founder and director of Cata Care Solutions, and we provide interim management services into the social care. I'm joined by Amelia Pace. Amelia, if you want to just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Amelia Pace, and I am the head of lifestyles at Castleford House, which is a nursing home situated just on the border of England or border of Wales. We're right in the middle of nowhere, really.
Nice. And Dr. Anna?
Hi, I'm Dr. Anna Shree. I am a psychiatrist working for the NHS. I'm currently living in Cornwall, and in my spare time, I've written for the British Journal of Psychiatry, and I am a leader of Geopsychiatry, which is a non-governmental organisation fighting for mental health on the global aspect. And I do some research for Care FM.
Wow. How do you have so also just to mention, so Amelia's got BBD and ADHD, and Anna has ASD, and I have ADHD. So they all kind of fall underneath the neurodiversity umbrella. All different. There is some crossovers between them. So we're just here to raise awareness, share some of our experiences about life as a neurodivergent person and the diagnosis process. So I think if we can kick off, I'd like to ask Anna, life before the diagnosis versus and the journey to diagnosis and the life after, if you can just kind of share some of your story around that.
Yeah, so I would say that I've always felt different. I think as far as I can remember, I've always felt like an alien. I never fitted in. I was someone who always daydreamed of daydream of making friends, having friends, because I didn't have a single friend. I think I've only had one, my best friend, Vicky, who I got to know her at the age of 6, but she had to leave school at the age of 7, and I didn't have a single friend like for a long time. So I was quite a loner at school. I was always described as weird, odd, never really got along. Teachers would say, Anna doesn't really focus, she's distracted. And I would be able to focus, but you're asking me to look you in the eye, and I found it very uncomfortable. I was very much have to look at the floor, and sometimes I could be looking elsewhere, and I could be completely listening to what you were saying, but I just don't feel comfortable of looking where I'm meant to be, because I find that really difficult. So
yeah, I understand.
I remember when I was around, GCSEs and A levels, I was pursuing, doing my exams to pursue a medical career. A lot of teachers would say, like, Anna cannot do medicine. She's not intelligent enough. She doesn't get along with friends, and she's barking up the wrong tree, that sort of thing. And I just always felt kind of a loner and had really difficulty of understanding, where do I belong? And I used to have this idea that I probably was adopted or something completely, like, I used to dream I'm actually meant to be somewhere else in a completely different world. And during med school, and when I went into medical school, by then people would know how to socialize and make friends, as well as dealing with the opposite sex. And I was someone who was just really awkward, made really conversation. I didn't even know how to say hello. So I actually, I think I by coincidence, I came across someone who was very nice and she was really funny, and we would have coffee together, and I would say I don't know how to take a friend, so we'd have to go through like sort of like scenarios of, okay, what do you say first? Hello, hi, my name is so and so. Hi, my name is Anna. Where do you go from there? And I found it really difficult. And I think I've just always felt like, I think, put down, that I wasn't like everyone else who knew what they were doing, who knew where they belong, already decided like what they're going to specialize in, and what their life is going. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not so sure what I want to do because I still don't know who I am. And I'm trying to figure out exactly where do I belong in this world. And at times I even thought, like, do I even exist? You have these really, as a psychiatrist, I would find them quite disturbing. But to me at the time, it just made sense. Like, do I really belong in this world? I'm not so suicidal. I don't have any ideas of harm myself. But it was just like, should I really be existing? Because I don't feel I belong. And that was like my journey throughout my whole life. And then suddenly, I think I would say I've always, when I was training, so this is like fast forward medical school, I was training and like in chess, and doing my foundation year program, and you'll come across um patients who were autistic, or other people, you come across these diagnoses. So like in autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD, dyslexia. And actually I was diagnosed with dyslexia at the age of 17 because so at that time I had that diagnosis, but I still was like, I don't think that's actually me just yet. That's just part of the issue. And I was going through like the criteria or like whatever you find on the internet, and the answers I got was when I went to the GP to say, oh, I think I'm autistic. It'll be, oh, everyone's a little bit autistic, or we all have these traits, or everyone's a bit different. We don't belong in a box. You are your own you, and you should embrace it. But I wasn't really satisfied because I still felt like I was being asked to coincide with everyone else. Like to as in like fit in and just like immerse yourself into the world, which to the world that doesn't even make sense to me at all. So how can it's kind of like that saying of someone told me this, which I really agree with, is it's kind of like saying like you're on MacBook trying to work in the world of Microsoft. It's just like does not work. And I think then what happened was COVID happened. So going through, kept mustering through, had a lot of difficulties still going on with colleagues, even sometimes seniors. And I was very much truthful. I say things how it is, but people could take it to offense, or oh, I just don't say anything at all, and people think you don't want to say anything. So no, I do. I don't know how to communicate to. And then COVID happened, and that, even though I did actually felt I thrived in during COVID, in which I really liked the isolation. I enjoyed the things I liked. I didn't have to deal with so much facial interactions and feel constantly awkward. I didn't know that I was actually also unmasking. So masking is like, in order to get along, it's how the methods we use of so we don't have to show our true selves, because no one will accept it. So we could be smiling, we're sad, when something sort of makes us jumps, we're sort of like our back is straight and we're like looking down on to the floor, but actually we just want to run outside. It's all, and it's all of that was just like thrown out the window, and I've really struggled a lot with getting along with colleagues, getting along with seniors. You know, people started noticing Anna's really forward. She's challenging. She's a difficult doctor in difficulty. And I didn't really understand why. I found it really hard because I tried to work, I felt I didn't do anything different. I was just being me. But people were saying like, no, this is not the person we knew before. And then I suffered from burnout and exhaustion. So I had to take, I think, close to 4 weeks off. And during that time, I came across, I was with I actually read a book called The Doctors in Distress, which by Professor Clara, I think, Garada. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but no, Claire Garada, sorry. And it sort of nicked me on. I joined the NHS Practitioner Health, and it forced me to like see a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist said to me, she diagnosed with me depression, anxiety. I was seeing therapy. I was doing cognitive behavioral therapy. Then I started seeing a psychotherapist, and then it was about 6 months later on. It was sort of said, I think you have autism spectrum disorder, and I think you need to have that diagnosed. I think you need to go for diagnosis and an assessment, really. The assessment under the NHS is 5 years. So I put myself forward and I had to wait. But at the same time, I was going through another sort of mental breakdown. I would say my career was being affected. I think my training was starting to be quite, I was struggling. I would say I was really struggling in my training. So I then had to go privately. There was no choice. And I actually needed to be supported in that because my training program at the NHS, they don't, even if you work for the NHS or the training program, I think it's thought that actually you can go get supported and get an assessment, bypass the long waiting list, and it doesn't happen. So I had to go privately, and I received the diagnosis. And the feeling that you get when you're diagnosed is, I will never forget, was more like I was rejuvenated. I felt like I was reborn again. And when I told my sister, the first thing she said was, no wonder. Everything makes so much sense now. Everything fits into place. And I felt so relieved. And since then, I've been really forward. I wear my badge here to say I'm autistic. I've been researching it, but it's been a long journey, and it's still a journey.
It's a lifelong journey, isn't it? Really? Yeah.
But it just made me realize I've always been this way, but I needed to fight tooth and nail in order to get here. So
yeah. Wow. We have quite similar stories, actually. Especially the kind of the COVID bit. That's when things started to click into place for me. Like you, I really enjoyed being at home. I really enjoyed not seeing people and not being forced into social situations, because I always said yes to everything. But it was nice not to even have that option, and then spend more time thinking, being more self-aware, which led me to my diagnosis, or to get to be assessed, because I started noticing a lot more things that I'd just kind of pushed to the side. I'm just that way. I'm just lazy. I'm just socially awkward. I'm just this. I just need to drink alcohol to be able to speak to people. No, Faye, that's not normal. There's something wrong with you. Not wrong, but there's something different. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. And same with the eye contact. I never realized I did it until I was diagnosed. But when I'm talking, I prefer to look away. But we taught out with it. If you don't, not having eye contact is rude. That's what we're all taught, and it's absolutely not. But I stare at people when they're talking to me, which is also a bit weird. And that's because I need to focus on that person talking. Otherwise, it won't go in, and then I can just completely forget what they've said. But yeah, thank you. That's really, really interesting. And then what about you, Amelia? I know your story's be very, very different. Being diagnosed with BPD quite a while ago, and then so if you want to just kind of talk about your diagnosis and pre-diagnosis life.
So I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder in 2016. Before that, prior to that, I very much struggle with my emotions. Very oversensitive, either inappropriate anger, or it wasn't just like crying or upset. It was like grieving, crying over just little things. Or when you are happy, you just want to hold on to that happiness for as long as you can because it's such a euphoric feeling. And for 2 years nearly, I was, I know something's not right, and I had about maybe 7 different antidepressants, and I'd have, you kind of take it for 12 weeks, and you're like, it's not working, it's not right, and eventually I was referred to the mental health team. Had an assessment pretty quickly. I can't kind of fault them in that respect, and was diagnosed. I did DBT, but halfway through that it got cancelled. So, and after that, I think I was still at a stage where I didn't really accept the diagnosis. I didn't really know that much and educated myself, and I kind of let them discharge me. And I'm not one to reach out for help, really. I've always found that very difficult, like to ask people for help. And I went back to the service maybe a year or 2 after, and I started DBT again. They put me on medication. I've always taken the same medication. It was increased. There's obviously no set medication for a personality disorder, especially borderline. You've got like ADHD meds. There is a specific ones to take, but with borderline personality disorder, there's not. There's a variety of medications which have been trialed, but I was always told there was just they would give me what they thought suited my symptoms to manage it the best they could. And at the time, which has always been, was quetiapine. That's always kind of worked for me because one of my biggest problems is insomnia and not sleeping. I did DBT again, and as well as DBT, I had a one-to-one psychologist, and I did that. So that was twice a week, and that's a massive commitment for me personally because it was every morning I had to take off work. Every Friday I couldn't work, I couldn't do training because I had the one-to-one. It sounds bizarre. Obviously, TikTok became this massive thing in the pandemic. And you're at home on your own. You can't see your friends, you can't go out, you can't do anything. And you do find yourself there and I would just be there absolutely so engaged in my phone, just scrolling through these videos. And they say that like things come up that are like relevant to your personality and your likes and your dislikes and things like that. And there was a lot of videos about HD, and I've always, I educate myself, I guess, on it. And the CPM I had at the time, I kept saying like, I really do think I might have this. And then in my head, I'm like, am I just forcing this on myself? This is like, no, maybe this isn't real. And then I'm still at that stage sometimes where I've just got no sense of identity of who I am sometimes. I'm like, maybe I don't have BPD, and maybe this is just, they've just misdiagnosed me and I just don't know what the hell's going on. And then I kept mentioning it for quite a little while, like, I actually think this could be a problem. And in work, I'd be doing something, and if I knew it was tedious or I didn't really want to do it, in my head I'd be like, right, let's walk away, let's go and do something. I need the toilet now, I need to go and get a drink right now. And I was very lucky to have a member of my team who I still work with now, and she would kind of like carry on what I was doing. And they used to be like running jokes of like, Amelia only does one activity once, or then she passes it on to Beth and she'll do it then, or half a job Harry, like I'd start something and not finish it. And at the time, like you can have a little laugh with it, but then when you get home you think, you're like, why am I doing that? That's actually not normal. I finished DBT this year, and as much as I hated it, one thing that always stuck out for me is I could not do mindfulness. There was like this mental block, and it used to make me so angry. And I always remember sitting with my psychologist, and he was like, we're going to do a guided exercise. And he was like, okay, focus on your feet. I'm like, it's just a foot. It's just a foot. What do you want me to look at? It's just a foot. What do you feel? Nothing. I can't feel my foot. What do you want me to do? And he's like, but take a minute, focus on your breathing. I don't want to, I couldn't, I physically, like there was something in my head, like I can't do this. I physically can't do it. And I used to get so frustrated. Anytime mindfulness was brought up, I was like, right, I'm turning my camera off. I'm not doing this. It's a load of crap. I'm not doing it. And I thought, maybe I just don't have the attention to do it. Maybe this is ADHD and I just don't have the attention span to physically engage in this activity, which does require a lot of patience and attention. I asked for a referral. Obviously, I was already under the team, so it was a little bit easier for me to kind of get access to that diagnosis. I was told it was a 12-month waiting list for any ADHD assessment, so which is it's a long time, but I was just, it's maybe in 6 months I'll change my mind and decide I haven't got it anymore. But I knew that I needed to go through with it. It came out pretty quickly. I think I was referred in maybe the July. I was asked to provide evidence to support my feeling, and I'm like, what? How do you provide evidence?
So did you do like a questionnaire or anything, or was it just?
No, so it was literally my own opinion. So I got a supporting statement off my manager just to see if he could identify any of these like traits or how he thought my performance was affected at times. And weirdly, I did these ADHD quizzes online, and everyone was like 100% ADHD, totally ADHD. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to use it. Had the appointment on the 26th of September. Really quite an in-depth assessment. And it looks at loads of different things. I knew I struggled in school. I knew I did. And I just always thought I just couldn't be asked. I just didn't want to do it. And actually, when I think back, I think that was just a coping mechanism, like, understand it. I can't do it. I'm not doing it. And to save myself that embarrassment of failure. I've always had this big thing about like failing. Don't want to fail. So my coping mechanism is I'm going to stop doing that. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to disengage and that's it. And I still do that at times now when I get frustrated. I had the diagnosis, was recommended to start a medication which is known as Albanzadol. There's a lot of side effects. They was like, they have a positive impact of this, but they're also this, and this. And you sat there like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Should I go? I'm like, do you know what? I'm just going to try it. If I don't try it, I'm never going to know if they work or not. I took 30 milligrams for a little while, maybe about a month. They worked. I really did notice that when I first took them the first day, I was sat there watching a presentation and I literally couldn't take my eyes off this person. I couldn't do anything but watch this person. I'm like, and in my head, I'm like, and I could hear my thoughts, like they were actually quite in order. They weren't like 1,000 at a time, like what on earth is going on? Like, and they were good, like they worked. I felt better. I did feel more focused. And then I had a review and I kind of like just fed back that I felt that, they're a 12-hour slow release tablet. They should kind of be working for that period of time, or at least a longer period of time, and not 12 hours. I felt that they were maybe lasting like 5 to 6 hours in my system. Wasn't really feeling the effect after. And I was recommended to start the 50 milligrams, which I started, and they have been amazing. They literally like, I took them and my head was quiet. And I'm like, is this what it's supposed to be like? Is this what I should be like? Is this normal? Is this what's defined as normal? And I'm there like thinking, and I can actually follow a process of thought and have a train of thought after, and not be distracted by the thoughts coming in, which are so intrusive. And it was a massive difference. And I think, like, there is similarities in the diagnosis, struggling to regulate emotions, obviously. You do notice it, but I do feel, if I look back to 2016 to how I am now, I never thought I'd be sat here in this position now, actually not feeling too bad about life, not kind of relying on that suicide ideation of something goes wrong, well, it's fine because I can just kill myself and it'll be fine. And I don't anymore, and it was an extremely unhealthy coping mechanism, I guess.
And obviously you've put the things in place alongside the medication. It's not just the meds, is it? It's obviously all these years. I think even before diagnosis, we just have to learn coping mechanisms without realizing why or how we're doing it. Like I've learned, lots of, I'm not on medication. So I was diagnosed with ADHD about a year ago. It was the same. So I went to my GP and was completely dismissed. So then I had a bee in my bonnet and went private straight away. I didn't even wait around, wait for the 12 months, all that kind of stuff. I just thought, I don't have the energy. I know I've got ADHD. It's in my head. And that impulsive ADHD nature, I need diagnosing now, tomorrow. So, you know, my employer at the time really kindly paid for me an ADHD assessment. And similar to you, I had to provide evidence, but they gave me questionnaires. My husband had to fill out a questionnaire. They were really quite long-winded. And then I had a 90-minute assessment, 2-hour assessment, something like that, with a psychologist, and diagnosed me on the spot and said, and I was diagnosed with inattentive ADHD, which used to be called ADD. And now obviously there's just the ADHD, you're either hyperactive, inattentive, or both. Yeah. So where I don't display hyperactivity physically, mine's more internal. So the racing thoughts, the fidgeting, you know, I'll always need a fidget thing. But I'm not that hyperactive schoolboy stereotype that people still think ADHD is, don't they? So yeah, got diagnosed, got my report within a couple of weeks. And then they said, we recommend you to go on meds. You can pay £100 a month if you want to do it through this private company. And I thought, I don't really want to do that. They said, you can go through the NHS, but it might be a little longer. So I've kind of sat on it and waited and just researched the hell out of ADHD this last year. I've just lived and breathed it and found everything I can. And TikTok's been a great resource for all its flaws. It really has. Reddit, all these different communities I've now become part of. It's great. And then a couple of months ago, I thought, might try meds, because the busy mind, I just want it to shut up sometimes. It'd be really nice. And the executive function problems, you know, not being able to get started sometimes, and working from home, I have to force myself to get started because I don't have that drive to work, an office full of people to put me in work mode. I have to just figure it out for myself. And some days are harder than others. Some days I really struggle. I have to do it, obviously, but and I thought, you know, meds might help me with that if they can help me focus on something. So I know I'm starting my day with a coffee and doing some yoga. How lovely would that be? It never happens. It's always just a coffee and then sit down for half an hour and then start work. So I finally made a GP appointment for some blood tests to go on ADHD medication. That were a few weeks process. Once I got my blood test back, I said, yeah, everything's fine. And then the psychiatrist on the phone said, it's a really long wait though now to get medication, so you're just gonna have to sit back. And I'm like, oh no. So that were a month ago and I still haven't heard anything. So I think that's a huge problem at the moment in it, with getting diagnosed for ADHD, autism. It's the wait time. And we're not patient people. And we don't always have that, that get up and go to chase things, to chase the, you know, chase the GP, chase the NHS, all that kind of stuff. The system is just completely flawed. And so it's either wait a long time or pay a lot of money and get a diagnosis quickly. And there's kind of no two ways about it, really, is there?
It's really weird.
Sorry, you go.
I was about to say that it's bizarre because, you know, I've always known that it was something different, and you know, I'm talking about, I sound really old, but I'm talking about, I've had my my pediatrician letter from 1995 that had, if you read it, could definitely show signs of an autistic child, but at that time it wasn't identified. And now if a child is wanting to get an assessment, they have to wait roughly maybe 2 to 3 years. So during that time, that child is unable to, it's not even able to be focused enough to receive the right education, or not the right education, the education that it's in, because he or she is struggling. And but for an adult, they have to wait for 4 years. So for me, you know, it wasn't that I was just frustrated. It was more that I was already going through another mental health crisis, that, because, you know, we were still in COVID, and I was technically, after recovering from my burnout and exhaustion, I was going into another burnout and exhaustion. So I'm at work, I believe I'm autistic, but I'm still waiting to be diagnosed. I have to wait for 5 years. I was very fortunate to be supported to be from my immediate family to get the assessment, but not everyone is that lucky. And so therefore my immediate frustration was like, if I didn't have the money, not only would I might have had to step out of my training because I was really struggling. But on top of that, even though when I had informed my workplace, I think I believe I am autistic and I am really struggling, you still have to provide that evidence, because the idea of being self-diagnosed as autistic or ADHD is not enough.
No.
And I think we need to start accepting that sometimes people you do need to accept that a self-diagnosis has efficient and reliable has a formal diagnosis, because not everyone has the money to get the private diagnosis because of the long waiting list. And also maybe sometimes they are unable to be there, because the assessment is not just like half an hour appointment. For me it took 3 weeks. I don't know how it is for you, Amelia and Faye, but it was a 3 weeks appointments, and one appointment was like 5 hours. The other appointment was about 3 hours. I mean, it's long, and not everyone has that ability to take that time away, especially during a 9 to 5 work day.
Exactly.
So it's you're right. Actually, it's not everyone. It's not that we're not patient enough. It's sometimes it's just not feasible.
Exactly.
It's not feasible.
Yeah. And even self-diagnosing, but you don't have to shout about it and tell people, but you then just acknowledging it yourself, going out and finding coaching or looking for resources online. Because if you self-diagnose, if you convince yourself you are ADHD, ASD, whatever, you can find the help. Yes, you can't get medicated, but that's the only difference, really, isn't it? I self-diagnosed for a few months and then researched it more and more and more. And then I was just absolutely convinced I need a diagnosis just to put that cherry on the cake, But yeah, so I was just looking in the comments, and Steve Watson said, his boys had undiagnosed autism and he had to attend so many parenting classes because of it, and that's the thing. Like, how do you manage as a parent when probably in a neurodiverse household? I can't even imagine. I think my niece has ADHD. I'm convinced she has, but that's a whole other story. And I think she's 10 years old. If she can be diagnosed now rather than when she's an adult and she has to figure it out for herself, her life's going to be so much easier. She's going to get through school easier. She gets in trouble at school. She can't concentrate. She hates maths, so she won't do it. There's just so many signs. I think if she were diagnosed now, and again, it's going to be a long wait list because it's just growing and growing in it as the awareness grows. But yeah, life's going to be easier for kids that get diagnosed sooner rather than later. Amelia, you were going to say something. I don't know if you can remember what it was.
No. I was just wondering if you think there's a difference. Obviously, I'm under the Welsh mental health team. And I don't know if that makes any difference. Obviously, with medication, for me, obviously prescriptions in Wales are free. So any prescription I had, I would just take straight to the pharmacy, and that's just given to me. It's not a case of, wait, obviously the medication I take can't be prescribed by a GP. It's got to come from a psychiatrist because of the side effects and whatever. And I just, if do you reckon there's a difference in the services between Wales and England, because the waiting times and the appointments, which I'll be honest, a lot of the Welsh appointments are done on Microsoft Teams, and that's kind of done in a way to save you coming in or booking lots of time off work and things like that. So you could literally, if you were in work, you could just go in the office and shut the door, and you've just got it on Zoom for half hour. And my assessment was on Zoom.
Wow.
And I just think listening to you guys, your guys' experiences compared with the Welsh mental health team is just, I don't know, a little bit different. And I feel really, really quite not bad, but I got really very annoyed this morning in the Welsh mental health team because I've only been trying for 3 days to get medication, and you've been waiting a long, long time, and I'm there my blood pressure's 150. And they're like, we can't give you them because your blood pressure's up. I'm like, it's because I'm angry, because I've been waiting for 3 weeks for these tablets. And you're waiting like over a month, and I don't think I could cope with that. I think I would be so.
I suppose I've never had the meds, so I haven't got anything to compare it to yet, but I can imagine the frustration. But do you kind of feel a difference? So now you're obviously not on medication. Is there a massive difference straight away? Does it just kind of work that day and then nothing the next day with your meds? Or
I find after about half an hour, you take it, and within half an hour, I know, like, I've got all of a sudden that motivation's there to go and do something. More so with the higher dose, I feel like I don't ever want to shut up. Like, all these words just keep falling out of my mouth, and I have to say, and I feel quite powerful, and I can just kind of take on anything. But I did manage to get them in the end, because I was quite forceful, shall we say. But I knew, like, tonight I needed them, because I knew that something like this, I do need to focus, and I don't want to be distracted by the clock on the wall, or the noise of the air conditioning, or, you know, the buzzer system going off on the floor. Like, I needed to have my attention. I have had like days where, you know, they're short staffed, they're under pressure, they don't have many staff to be able to deal with your requests. Psychiatry in demand in the mental health service that I'm under. And I guess, you know, for me, it's hard, because, like I said, I really do struggle with patience. And to be told, well, you need to wait another day, that's really, really hard for me to wait. Especially, not that you know, they're supposed to be, you know, kind of addictive and you feel dependent on. I don't feel dependent on them. I think I'm more addicted to the feeling, that focus, that kind of relief that I get when I take them. I don't think that they're an addictive feeling, as if like euphoric feeling. I'm addicted to the effect they have. I want to be focused. I want to be able to do my coursework and not have to keep stopping tasks to give myself a break, or sit there and think, all right, in 2 minutes I'm going to spend 5 minutes on my phone to give myself a break because I can't focus. And I don't want that, you know.
Wow. I'm definitely going to tell you as soon as I've got this appointment that they're promising me. Might be in the new year, because that's the thing. I have, because I'm naturally with ADHD, and I don't know if it's the same with you, Dr. Anna, but just naturally unorganized. And because of that, we have to make our lives so organized so we don't catch ourselves out. So, you know, I have lists everywhere, diaries, I have chalkboards, I have a place for everything in my house, so that I don't lose my keys, so that I don't forget appointments, so that I don't do all these, you know, things that make me look careless and flaky, when it's not really me being careless and flaky. It's just because I'm ADHD. I forgot what I was going to go on to then. That's another thing, ADHD, working memory. I can't remember what I was talking about 2 seconds ago.
I feel like there's always this stereotype, you know, with all, you know, when you're, like, I think when is it Rainy Man that came out, or even now, like, you know, as soon as people think about autism, they think about Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. When they think about, I don't know what people think about when it's ADHD, but either way, they have this like stereotype in their head, and it's not like that. I mean, it could be like that, but you know, at the end of the day, you know, neurodiversity is a spectrum, and it's not always linear. It's like people are still very much different, but what makes us, I would say, different compared to the rest is that we have our own cliche that generally people just, if they were in our shoes, would find it very difficult. So, like, for example, you know, I completely empathize what Amelia said was, you know, with, you know, I have to wait for 3 days to get the medication. Even just waiting for a month to get the medication, I would find it really difficult. I think for me, it's more like I've been told I will have to take this medication. I've been told I will have a medication, and so there's this sort of intrinsic feeling of like I am unable to do anything right because unless I have this medication. They say, oh no, you could be addicted, or that's just your mindset. And so it's not like that. You've told me that I will need to start this. Why is it taking so long? And it could be like, to be honest, the services for ADHD and autism is dire. There's a lot of funding cuts. People are leaving the NHS because you know, burnout and burnout is such a common theme. Autistic spectrum, autistics and ADHD have a lot of burnout too. But this is the thing, and so these services, there's a lot of service delays, and so we have to then, being organized, we have to sort of make adjustments that are technically unreasonable so we can get on with our lives. And you're talking about organized. I have 3 diaries, and at times I'm still disorganized. It's like, is it working? It's like, it is working, but I need those 3 diaries in order to function. I need a mid diary, like I need a mid diary, a full diary, and I can just so I can just. And it's chaotic. It is chaotic, but it's the only way I can function, because because at the time when I was reaching, even once I got diagnosed, to get services, sometimes later on, I think a month or 2, cuts are done, and the services is no longer functioning, is no longer in place. They said, I'm really sorry, but we're unable to sustain it, so I'm afraid we're going to have to back down. So then you're back, in a way, you're sort of just saying, right, I've been diagnosed, I'm on medication, I'm not on medication, I was seeing this person, or I was about to see this person, and so now what do I do? And so then you're going back into being researcher, like, well, what do I do to move forward? You research into like many forums, forums that are directed for a neurodiversity. You look at TikTok. I look at Instagram. I'm more Instagram really than TikTok. You sort of search for advice, see diagrams, look at videos. I mean, those are our tools, because we're trying to continue on, because we can't just stop and our lives. We are trying to continue on doing our work, living life, living our hobbies, meeting our friends and our families, but making these adjustments that we were doing before that were unreasonable, but we have to continue it because the services available is no longer there, or it's not as efficient as it could be because of cuts, or if we want to get the services that is technically what's the word, I've forgotten, but basically tailored towards our needs, you have to pay a lot of money, which not everyone can afford.
Exactly, that's it. Most people can't, can they? That's the thing. So in terms of adjustments at being a doctor, then how does that work? Like, for me, for adjustments is, I wear headphones all day long, to even working from home, to just distract me from any outside noise and help me focus. Flexi working, because I know Amelia's the same. We just can't get out of bed on a morning. All those kind of different things. But being a doctor, obviously, I suppose, do you have kind of shifts that you have to stick to, and you work in one set place? Yeah. So what other adjustments have you had that?
Oh God. I mean, what the amazing thing is, I'll just say quickly that I think there's a lot of people who think you cannot be a doctor if you're autistic, and that is not true. I read an article that they did a survey, and 1.1% of GPs, and I think 1% of 1 to 1.1% of GPs, and then autistics and psychiatrists are autistic. So 1.1% on a UK population is 3,000. So that is a big number, and it could be more, because a lot of doctors aren't diagnosed yet because they're afraid of stigma. They're afraid of that if they identify themselves as ADHD or dyslexic or autistic or any other sort of in the spectrum of neurodiversity, they will be labeled as unable to do their job because they're doing it differently to others. My adjustment, going back to the question of what I've done, is I had to do a lot of things, to function. So like getting shift patterns, it is horrible. I was trying sleeping tablets. I even tried to do Nitol, and that didn't work. So I ended up using melatonin. And that in itself, according to the National Autistic Society website, they even say like most autistic people do have sleeping problems, suffer from insomnia, and so they would need to rely on melatonin. So I need a good sleep hygiene. I have to have a routine in order to so my body knows I need to go to bed. I don't know if anyone knows like the sad light. So I need the sad light, the sad alarm, because when I go into a room that is really bright light, and I'm, even if I just use my phone just to set the alarm, the blue light, the bright light, it really messes up with my circadian like system. So like my brain, my circadian rhythm. Sorry, that sort of tells my brain like, okay, right now it's time to go to bed. So I need the sad light. Right now I've got a vitamin D light right in front of me because it's winter as well. Most neurodiversity people they suffer from seasonal affective disorder, so they need the light to sort of stimulate and protect them from suffering from those like fluctuation of moods. And as a doctor, when you're dealing with the rush mode and like the noisy environment, so in some ways I was really fortunate that I'm being supported by my trust and my occupational health and my line managers and my consultants to do to have adjustments that even though I'm still fighting tooth and nail for, they're learning. The trust is that like as in like the workplace is learning through we have a group for neurodiversity to say, oh, this is what we need to do, and they're great. They gave me an office space. They've given me some thinking time, a quiet place that I could think. If I feel a bit overwhelmed, my amazing consultant says, just take a walk. We have a lovely little back garden at the back of the hospital. Just take a walk and come back. If I get really emotional, and sometimes I do because it gets noisy. They say, we've got an office, and we were given an office because it was noisy, the ward. And I use loop earplugs. I don't know if anyone uses loop earplugs. I was given, they allowed me to use it, and so that was for the noise. And what else did I do? I think sometimes they've also allowed me to have noise cancelling headphones if it gets a little bit noisy, and also then it's then communication. So I think the main thing that we're still trying to get through is when it comes to communication. That's a big thing for autistic doctors, and ADHD. But for my case, it's more like you could be saying something that with nuances, and I could take it literally. So, for an example, say I'm writing notes, and you've said, okay, I probably you to me, and I'm not saying it is, but just an example. This is a very simplified example of a clinical scenario, but it's nothing that I've done. But I'm very similar. Is I'm writing notes in red pen because I took it that you told me that Anna, you need to write these notes in red pen, so I'm writing in red pen. Then say like, I don't know, next day or a couple of days later, you say like, oh, you were writing this notes in red pen. Why? And I said, well, you told me to write in red pen because you said, I need to write it in red pen. And you go, no, I said you need to write in purple pen. That's what I said. I think you misunderstood and misheard. Maybe you were fidgety. Maybe your mind was not on it. Because sometimes our mind is not really focused because we're already dealing with the noisy environment. We're already thinking about going to see do a ward round. But we've got 20 minutes between the ward round, and I need to like get to the canteen and go to the loo or something. So I've already got so many things done, so maybe you just weren't listening, so I don't know. But anyway, so then you said you need to write the notes in red pen. You should have written the notes in purple pen. You should have written the notes in purple pen, not red pen. So then I take it like, oh, okay, fine, I'm really sorry. And then I start writing the notes in purple pen. So I'm writing notes in purple pen because you said that's what I'm supposed to do. And then the next day you're telling me, actually, why are you writing the notes in purple pen? Well, you told me that I should have written in purple pen in the first place. And if like, you would say, no, you were meant to write it in purple pen in the first place, but you didn't. You wrote it in red pen. Now, I don't want you to change it, the color of the pen. I just wanted to tell you that you made a mistake. And so that in itself is already confusing, because I took it as, you've just told me that I made a mistake, so I thought I had to correct it right now. And then you're telling me I'm making another. So you know, a lot of adjustments I have made that are physical, but a lot of adjustments that needs to be made, or I'm still struggling with, is because there is this idea of actually, you know, you're not hearing, or like you're not meant to be changing your behavior. You're meant to be changing yourself in order to fit this scenario, in so that you could continue working and or doing what you do. And actually, you know, yes, I could change. I can't change myself. I am autistic. It's like saying you're telling me to change my skin color. It's like you telling me to change you know, I don't know, my eye color. You know, I can't do that. I am autistic as a person. You know, it's like trying to change my sexual orientation. Like, I can't do that. This is who I am. But I can make adjustments, you know, to say, okay, I'm going to sort of slow down. I'm going to, you know, try to be more focused, not think about what needs to be done later. Might need to start writing it down. It might mean that it takes me longer, but at least it means I'll make less mistakes, less errors, you know, more patience, more safety to the patients. But the other person might think, oh, they can go on as normal, you know, and actually we would need you to slow down as well. We would need you to also take take 3 or 4 extra steps in order to meet our needs. And that's another issue, because some people would say, well, then they're babysitting. They're just, you know, going behind you. Where's your independency? You know, where's your uniqueness? And I think they're like, well, that is independency. That is independency. But the thing is, I'm having to work as a doctor in this system that is technically systemically hierarchical. I am following the leads, but I'm not as someone who can just like take in 10, 15 information and do everything, or understand the nuances, or like, okay, you've just told me to write in purple pen, next time I'll write it in purple pen. It's not like that. I need you also to take 4 or 5 extra steps. I might need you when you give me an order. You might need to write it down. You might need to email me the instructions. You might need to tell me when we're giving feedback in a quiet room, in a separate session. You know, those are the, you know, extra steps that could be so exhausting. And someone might say, I don't have the patience to. Might to say, actually, you might need to have that, because we need to think about patient safety. And there's just, you know, if it's not me, it's going to be someone else. There's going to be more doctors who's going to come forward and say, like, I'm neurodiversity. And it's better to do it now than, like, you know, at a time where it's possibly not appropriate. You know, better safe than sorry, or much years down the line. And people might, many years ahead, will be like, well, why didn't those people do it many years before? Like, well, what was the problem back then? Because just quickly, I was just doing speaking to a digital service about something, and I said, like, you know, these things, you know, we're doing online prescription. These things, they're not really neurodiverse friendly. I find it very difficult. And the guy said to me, they had to default it to whether it was to save a lot of time, or actually it would take a lot of time. But people are just doing it a bit more carefully, I guess, in a sense. And I sort of said, like, well, I would prefer it takes more time, because that would mean less mistakes. But if someone's saying defaulting because they want to save a lot of time, then we need just a little bit more instructions.
Yeah, and it's really, it doesn't cost anything.
No.
You know, it's just a little bit more time to help neurodivergent people fit into the neurotypical world that we've created. And it can, like you say, it can be little things. Like for me, I get massive anxiety if somebody texts me and says, can we have a chat? oh no, what's up? Am I being fired? I mean, I own my own business, so that doesn't happen now, but like, you know, I just think the worst thing. Whereas if you could just send a text and say, I want to talk to you about X, Y, and Z, that could just save me from having an awful day. Little things like that. If we have a meeting, maybe let's take notes and send them to me after so I don't forget everything. You know, tiny little adjustments that don't have to cost anything can make the world of difference, can't they, for someone with neurodiversity. So, Amelia, we've talked about some kind of struggles at work. Let's talk about how your ADHD and BPD have helped you in your career.
I think for the BPD, one of the positives, I guess, is you're very empathetic. You know, you do get attached to people. I think that's quite a natural thing. And this year I lost one of the residents I probably had one of the best connections with ever. But when I was with her, we just bounced off each other. Like, she was just my best friend, literally. It was just bizarre. And losing somebody like that in here, I mean, it was heartbreaking. The funeral was one of the worst things I've ever done. But I feel their pain. I can sympathize on what I feel is on a completely different level. And I feel like I can really understand that emotion they feel. And I think that is, whilst it can be really challenging, I think it's really positive at the same time in a really kind of bizarre way. And I always kind of like, you know, the nature of dementia is quite unpredictable. You can't always predict what's going to happen. You could say, okay, it's Monday today, on Friday, we're going to go shopping and this is exactly what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Everything could change by then. You literally can't predict what's going to happen. And I think sometimes kind of being a little bit spontaneous and impulsive suits the needs of the residents here. I mean, some of my most successful activities I've kind of like planned and whacked out in like under 48 hours. I'm like, right, I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to do. I know I'm going to do it. I know I'm going to achieve it. I'm going to write a plan. I'm going to do a risk assessment. And it's done. It's great. It was amazing. I'm not going to do it again because I'm bored now. But, you know, it was amazing.
Something new under pressure.
Yeah, it's had its purpose. It's been fantastic. And I think that kind of feeds into me as well. Like, I don't want to, even though they might not remember it, I don't want to keep doing the same thing with them. I want to try and find new and exciting ways to kind of stimulate them, motivate them, engage them. And I think kind of like being a little bit impulsive sometimes, whilst yes, I will, you know, admit it's had its very negative effects on my career. And sometimes I have done things which I'm not proud of and I haven't thought about the consequences and I've just jumped straight in and I've done it and I'm like, about, you know, maybe a couple of days after I'm like, probably shouldn't have done that. Probably shouldn't have done that. But sometimes, you know, it does. I can't always help that. I can't always control that. And trying to explain that to somebody, it just sounds like a massive cop out, but it's not. I literally don't think about the consequences. My mind is like, we're doing this now. There's no time to think this is what's happening and it's done. You're like, after the afterthought, you're like, not ideal. It's done now. We'll just kind of deal with the consequences after, because you don't have time to deal with it at the time because it's done. You have no thought. And I like that kind of suits the needs of the residents at times, kind of like being that little bit impulsive and just, I come in and work on a Monday and I'm like, right, today we're going to the beach. I don't need to think about it. The minivan's out the back. I've got the budget in the corner of my office. Let's go. And that's better because they don't have time to be like, oh, well, you know, I was going to do this happening, or, you know, maybe I was going to do that. I'm like, no, you know, we're going to go to the beach. They haven't got time to like get a little bit anxious about going out or like coming out of their comfort zone. Like, it's there, the opportunity's there. And I do find that's much more successful to get people to engage. Is just, we're doing this now. This is what we're doing. It's going to be amazing. And usually it is. And like, I kind of love that in a kind of like a really weird way. And yeah, I think it has just much more of a positive effect. And sometimes it isn't suitable to you don't have time to plan. You don't. And that impulsive thought process is, you utilize it. You know, you've got to make the best out of a bad situation. And I'm very aware that I'm impulsive. I'm very aware of that and just use it to my advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with the same. My whole life's just been a series of impulsive decisions. Some not great, but most of them really good and have, you know, been great for my career. And like you say, that kind of spontaneity and thriving in the pressure because I think we do, don't we? We, you know, neurodivergent people, and that's where we do our best work, and the dopamine's like, hello. So, which is probably why I'm really good at my job, because I have to think on my feet. I have to do things really quickly. I love it. I do my best work there. So yeah, it's not all bad. There's a lot of good things about, and we're really creative people, aren't we? And we think outside the box, and there's all the wonderful things. Yeah, there's a stigma, there's all the struggles we go through and all the symptoms we've talked about, but you know, it is a gift as well.
Yeah, and I just think, like, I think sometimes we do need to give others credit. I mean, I know I work in an NHS trust, and the NHS is still has a lot of work to do, you know, especially when it comes to like systemic racism and systemic sexism, you know, they have a lot of work to do. But I think I do like to say that, you know, when if they're open to learning and they are learning, I think there's no shame in that. I think, you know, we're in a world where, you know, we're starting to, you know, be more accepting, you know, and that, you know, not just be more accepting, we should have been always accepting, but we're learning a lot of being a human being, and that's what it's all about. It's about being a human being. But there is this sort of approach of saying, but we cannot accept mistakes, we cannot deal with everyone knowing that this has happened. I think we need to change that and said, listen, we are all human. We're dealing with we're looking after human people, and we are human beings too. We need to show that, yes, mistakes is done, but we are learning. And I think that's the issue. And that's why if you don't accept that actually there have been errors made, then that reinforces the stigma, and it reinforces that perpetuates the harm, that you are telling people, listen, you need to fit in this box, and if you don't, do not come here. You are not fit enough to be, you know, whatever profession, you know, you don't belong here. And we need to say, no, that is not acceptable. That's not the way it is. I'm sure you don't want to send out the message, but that is kind of what you're doing. Sorry, I just interrupted.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And it's great that we can have conversations like this, and hopefully loads of people are listening or will listen. And, you know, I'm one for posting things on LinkedIn about all the time since my diagnosis, and I've had tons of messages, private messages from people who won't say it out loud, but say, I think I've got ADHD. Can we have a chat? Can you just tell me about your diagnosis? And it's so nice that we can share that with people and, you know, and help people. So I think we're running out of time. So we could talk for hours and hours about neurodiversity, but I think maybe we could end it on a high, and maybe, I don't know, what could we say? Anybody that's listening that maybe I've seen a few of the comments, people said, you know, I've let's have a look. Seeing so many markers in myself. Here we go. So interesting and insightful. Thanks for sharing, you ladies. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, so this one from David. Seeing so many markers in myself and what you guys and others said. Both my kids are diagnosed. So what tip would you give to David? What's your top tip? For whether it's around diagnosis or a coping mechanism, anything. Let's leave it on that. This is for you, David.
I mean, no, Amelia, you go first. I seem to have talked about it a lot.
Just, you know, the BPD. I think there's around BPD. Weirdly, like I know, like Anna said about the Big Bang Theory reference, Jeffrey Dahmer's series was viral. You know, everyone was watching this on Netflix, and it came out that he had BPD, and it was like. And there was like Caroline Flack had issues like this, and there was all these like kind of like people that in the media that had BPD, and don't listen to that. It doesn't define you as a person, and you know it sounds awful. It is just a label. It's just an explanation how you think and ways that you act, and if anything, just look at it as like a reassurance. And you know. One thing that always annoys me is when people like refer to you as like a trait, because it's like it's just buying into the assumption that you are the disorder, and that invalidates the values that you have, which you enjoy or you like, and it's no wonder that people have like crisis with their identity and they don't know who they are. And I think just one thing to always like remember when you do get a diagnosis, you're still you, you're still a person. This is just a label that's kind of been given to you, it explains a lot. It gives you a lot of validation, I guess. Like, you know, I'm doing these things because there is actually something wrong. It's not because I'm unwell or I have big problems. This is the problem and I can manage it this way. And I just think you just try and kind of go into it with a positive attitude. And I spent a long time not believing it or not wanting it. And I wasted so much time doing that, And I wish if I could go back, I would just accept it and just focus on the positives and look at bettering myself.
Brilliant.
I think just quickly, just embrace it. I think I've always said embrace the diagnosis, not because I think the word diagnose, there's something so interesting about words. I love words. I think it really tells a lot about the history, and something about diagnosis, it's seen as pathological. And I think sometimes we need to change that narrative and just embrace it. That's what I started doing. When I got diagnosed, you know, my parents were a bit upset. And then, you know, sometimes people started, you know, you get the comment like, oh, everyone has like, you know, being diagnosed of, you know, neurodiversity nowadays. You know, you don't look autistic, or you're mild autistic, or you know, maybe for you guys, you've had some of those comments. You know, you don't look as though you got ADHD, or and I think sometimes you have to say like, well, that's not really helpful, because actually this is who I am. And I think my message to David is just embrace it. It's who you are, and you are awesome. You are doing. I'm pretty sure there's loads of people in your life that are saying you are amazing, and you are amazing, and it is who you are. You don't. I mean, it's not a chore. If you don't want to embrace it, then don't. But I think that's something that I would advise, is just embrace it. Has an amazing has like, that's what makes you amazing. That's who you are. And once you start changing all the negative narrative that is associated with that diagnosis, I feel like you would then start to see things a lot differently, and you sort of feel a lot lighter, and you start to achieve things, whether it's relationships, what you do day to day. You start to notice a lot of positive changes, because actually you're just doing things what you would normally do without having to fear of being judged, that what you're doing might not be acceptable. And I think that's what I advise to you, David.
Yeah, I love that. I agree completely. Something Renee Stewart said in the comments, I totally agree with. Once I learned that neurodivergent people tend to find each other, I found it interesting to look at the people I chose to spend time with. And I found that I think a lot of my friends are probably neurodivergent. You know, people I feel uncomfortable around aren't. And I don't know if we shouldn't do it, but when you've been diagnosed, you can kind of spot things in other people, and I'm always diagnosing people with ADHD. Not like up to the face, but sometimes I'm like, I think my best friend, yeah, I think you've actually got ADHD. But find your community of people, because it's so nice when you've lived a life thinking you were weird and alone and isolated, and you didn't tell anybody about it, and your mental health was in the toilet. It's so nice to know that there's actually millions of people out there that are just the same and struggling the same and have the same things as you. So, yeah. So thank you so much, Amelia and Dr. Anna. It's been absolutely lovely to talk to you both.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I hope we can do a follow-up, because we've got loads more to talk about.
We do need a follow-up.
Need a series, I think. Adam. So just to mention before we go, next week we've got a special episode on the 14th with the NIHE, and they're promoting something about quality. I'm so sorry. I should have told this at the beginning, because get to 60 minutes and I've totally forgot. Adam's going to tell everybody about it. I thought you were going to say something, Anna. No,
I was going to say.
That's it from us then, guys. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.